Yeah, that is a great question. This is a question we get asked a lot, is why do we have to create a use-related risk analysis, also called a URRA? And there's two major reasons. The first reason is to identify use errors to comply with ISO 14971, right? One of the requirements of ISO 14971 is to identify use errors and make sure we have controls in place to mitigate those risks appropriately. The second major reason for creating a URRA is it's part of the human factors process, right? We need to utilize the URRA to identify potential critical tasks, right? And as we identify critical tasks, those are an input into our human factors protocol. So it's one of the major starting points in the human factors process also. And there's about 10 columns that are really, really important to include in your URRA. And about 8 of those are really important for the FDA. And the FDA will request at least these 8 columns. And that's identifying the use task, possible use error, the associated hazardous situation, the potential harm to the patient or user, and of course the severity associated with that harm. Now, once we've identified those first 5 columns, next we have to determine whether or not it's a critical task or not, and that's usually related to the severity, or for a drug delivery system, the severity and relative to the dose impact in the drug delivery, right? And once we identify those 6 columns, the next is risk mitigations and potential HF validation or methods to validate the effectiveness of the risk mitigations. So those are the 8 columns that the FDA is going to want to see, and this is based on recent meetings with the FDA and working with clients and seeing the different responses from the FDA and doing pre-subs, etc. 2 other columns that are really important, more for the ISO 14971 compliance, is probability and risk level. Now, your risk level could be allocated in a higher level system risk assessment, and you could also allocate the probabilities in there and document that there, but it's a good practice to document the probability of the use error occurring in the URRA. Just know that the FDA is not really that interested in it from a human factor standpoint. They're mostly interested in the severity of the potential risk to the patient, potential harm to the patient, and essentially whether or not it's a critical task or not. So yeah, those are I would say the 8 major columns that the FDA wants, and then the additional 2 to comply with ISO 14971.